This is our spot where we used to walk down to Blue Gum Forest, straight down here, and there's the canyon to Govett Sleep, and this is our camping spot over here where we camped down in the Gross River right in front of us there. There was no sign of fire or anything, but in the distance we could see smoke.
The summer of 1957 was a bad season for wildfire. The Blue Mountains were often under threat. Drought, heat and tinder-dry conditions saw rolling outbreaks of serious fires, culminating in the worst bushfires in New South Wales history racing across the mountains. Saturday the 30th of November was a taste of things to come.
When we got down to Blue Gum Forest, we could see something, was happening.
Frightened by the sudden smell of smoke, 9 teenage boys raced for Perry's Lookdown. What they didn't know was that a wildfire was raging straight towards them. Scrambling the steep track to safety, they were suddenly overtaken by the fire.
When I looked behind like this and I seen the flames covered, and you see them at the top of the trees, 50 or 60 feet high, it was right on us. It was right on us. Unbelievable.
The first 4 boys on the track tried to outrun the fire up the slope. But group leader Barry told the last 4 boys to run back down through the flames.
He just said, ditch our packs and run. I grabbed Ross Jordan by the hand and pulled him through the flames, and I never seen Barry, but the other 4 boys, we got together and we all made our way down, stumbling over rocks and creeks, hiding in little canyons full of leeches and that. Everything, our packs were burnt, everything.
Fire continues to be a threat in the Blue Mountains. The community lives perched high above a bushfire-prone World Heritage National Park.
I'm sure that a lot of people that build in the bush, they love the bush, we all love the bush, don't realise the problem that may occur.
If they've lived through the fires, they know the danger of the fires. But there are so many new people come in the area who have not experienced anything to do with the fire.
Many people aren't aware how susceptible the Blue Mountains still are to bushfires and don't know the story of the 57 fires.
And then, the worst disaster of all. At Leura and Wentworth Falls on the Blue Mountains, a fire races up the valley without warning and strikes with merciless speed. On a day the people of the mountains will never forget.
Only 2 days after the Gross Valley fire, Monday, December the 2nd, was the day that the heart of Leura was decimated.
I lived on the railway, in the railway house on the highway. And all along here used to be a road here, used to go down Highland Street. And there was over here in the corner, there was a little mixed business, and further along was the Leura flats where people used to live. And further up the highway was the big Chateau Napier.
The legendary Chateau Napier guest house was a landmark on the hill above Leura village.
Well, the cordial factory, it was a big building, and that was in the middle there. BMC was the brand, Blue Mountains Cordials. And then up there was a garage opposite, alongside of the factory. And then here was a centre where they made baskets and everything else.
Well, where the Westpac now stands, the top end where the doors are, was Bernice Perryman's hairdressing salon, the only one in Leura. And the next, the bottom half was Jim Wilson's electrical store.
At 11:20 in the morning, Katoomba Fire Station got a report of a fire in North Katoomba.
It was about just before lunch.
And Mum came in and she said, I've just done my shopping, I thought I'd stop and have a bit of lunch with you. But she said, I don't like the look of that cloud over there, Tricia, it looks really bad. I said, what cloud?
Dropped the chickens off to Mr. Dow and I came back via the hospital. And as I came round the corner here along the Great Western Highway near the hospital, coming from the vicinity of the tip, I'm not saying it came from the tip, but it came from that vicinity, this great ball of black smoke.
At 12:53, fire was also reported in Queen's Road, Katoomba.
We lived on the corner of out on Mount Hay Road up there. First I went to school at the Catholic St Kenneth's in Katoomba.
A teacher saw smoke and raised the alarm.
And he said, all the Leura boys come out to the veranda and showed us the back of Leura. And it was well alight. And he said, good luck, boys. And we thought, how lucky can you get? Because we're out of here.
Mick and his brothers were sent off to walk home to Leura down the highway past the Katoomba Hospital. They didn't know it, but the fire was racing round the back of the hospital and heading for the highway.
And by the time I got down to Queen's Road, the fire had gotten to the highway and the house was alight there. And as I drove along the highway towards Leura, pop, 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 the fire was going faster than I was.
Frightening northwesterly winds pushed the fire down from North Katoomba. It raced up the gullies. It took out 14 houses in Highland Street and 9 houses in North Mall alone.
All the houses now along where we are, they were either burnt or burning.
I worked here in Leura at a grocery shop. At lunchtime, I'd gone back to work. I heard the fire brigades going and all the smoke was all coming over from the North Mall.
And the fire came in sort of from the west first, and then it created its own momentum, and it just went straight up Rawson Parade, Highland Street, and took everything in its path.
A mixed business, a grocery shop, and that's all the flats that were there, they were all burnt. The Baptist church got burnt, and there was a house the other side of it that got burnt as well.
And as I went up the hill, the Shadow Napier went woof, just like that. Great burst of flame, and it was amazing. This great heat shock, this ball of fiery embers rose up.
And we just stopped because the sun was over there and it was so huge and bright red through this huge cloud. And next thing, all this ash came down on us.
By 1:30, North Leura was blazing, and the fire now threatened the shops in Leura Mall.
Everybody wasn't prepared for this. They just had to run out of their homes, just like us, you know, with nothing, more or less, just what they stood up in.
The fire brigade went out and volunteers were called. Anybody that can come, come. And people untrained went to fight fires with wet sacks, branches.
And up there on the hill as well, there's the little Catholic school where the Sacred Heart nuns used to teach, and that got burnt.
The nuns came down with 35 to 40 children screaming, and they said, can you find the children? We've got to go back and save the convent. It's right behind the convent. So we were left with all these screaming children. Luckily, cars start to come from nowhere. People with handkerchiefs over their faces, give me some children, we'll take them out of here.
A fire front headed east and took out houses in Britain and Churchill Streets, on its way down towards Leura Primary School.
And it continued on, straight down, and devoured the school.
People also remember flames rushing up out of the gully to engulf the school from behind.
I drove down Railway Parade to try and pick up the kids, but everybody was leaving the school because of the fire, which was in the process of burning down the bridge.
Children were fleeing on the old wooden footbridge over the railway line, even as it was burning.
They managed to get across the bridge, and they were all running down Grove Street, where the little wallaby was leading them, see? He was hopping down there. I don't know where he finished up at, but he was in front anyhow.
It was terrible. All the children from the two schools, the public school and the Catholic school, they run down them all to try and get away from the fires.
Most of the places burnt down didn't burn down through direct contact with fire. It was through embers.
The howling winds fanned embers into roofs, eaves and fences, destroying houses long after the fire front had passed through. In North Leura, Mick and his brothers walked home through a trail of destruction.
Now, that one there, they were there, but the rest, they were all destroyed. You can see they're all, the house had been burnt out. That's my brother's place. It had a doctor's residence there and it burnt down. That was burnt down, that was burnt down, that was burnt down.
The boys made it home to Mount Hay Road, only to find their own house destroyed.
So my mum went up onto the clearing. She was with a neighbour and me uncle and my sister Mary. She was 6 weeks old, so she raced down, and she all she could get was 12 eggs, and she always cursed this day that she lost one egg, dropped an egg in the air.
By 2 o'clock, the flames were racing towards Wentworth Falls. People say the fire was coming in two fronts, from the direction of the Gross Valley and down the highway as well.
And I just pulled the roller doors down of the factory and come up here because I had all my glory box here, and all my mum's front fence was burning, and they let the school kids out, which is only in the next street.
I was 10 years old and I was a pupil at Wentworth Falls Primary School.
The children from Wentworth Falls Primary and the grammar school were taken down to the lake and nearby for safety.
I don't really remember getting here to the lake. I remember that the fires came through.
There was a clearing beside Miller's house, and we were put into little groups and covered with blankets.
And I remember them proceeding to put the blankets around us and over us and then turning the hoses on us.
And I don't remember whether we were hosed or whether buckets of water was thrown onto the blankets, but I remember being under the blankets, which was kind of a bit of fun.
Susan's father was out fighting in his local brigade, only to find out that his own home had caught fire.
My father was actually, the fire brigade was actually out the front of our home, which was burning.
We jumped out at his place, they run the hoses in and called out water. Nothing. It just dribbled out, and we all stood in his front yard and watched his home burnt to the ground.
Back in Leura, the fire had leapt the highway to the south side and was racing towards the golf course.
I said, Dad, hey, look. And we came out, and of course there was the fire, and we raced down to Mistral, which was a house he had let out, Scott Avenue, down the end of Railway Parade. And there were Hungarian people in there, and they were doing sewing. They had this great big sewing machine. And Dad and I are getting it out through the front door, and the back door of the house flew open, and there was a tank stand out the back, and that burst into flame, and the flame came straight up the hall behind us. We jumped over the sewing machine and the whole house went woof.
Another front came up to destroy shops in Leura village and homes in Leura Mall and Jersey Avenue.
When we looked around, there was the hairdressing salon going up and the electrical shop. It had come right behind the shops and took those two shops straight out, and the Presbyterian church down on the other end.
I remember the 57 fires very clearly. Only pictures, because I was only 8 years old, but the pictures in my head were when I was standing beside the firemen that were fighting the fire just behind me, hosing down the backyard. So we got into the car and drove out through all the smoke.
And these fireballs were going out ahead of the fire. I've never seen anything like it. And suddenly they would land somewhere, and because everything was tinder dry, and it would just go.
Well, it was terrible. Just all the houses up here and further up Jersey Avenue, and this was all vacant. It's a big block of land, and then there was a house that was partly burnt, another one completely burnt, and further up Jersey Avenue.
I can remember the chaos because there was no real coordination or management. The bushfire brigades had been disbanded a couple of years previously.
The water supply didn't last long as the reservoirs quickly ran dry.
So there was just nothing when you turned on a garden hose, nothing trickled out.
We had all the animals inside and we were filling all the gutters up with water, and I just grabbed a few things, and then someone said to me that the factory's on fire, the cordial factory.
But this wall of flame, like a huge ocean wave, came up out of the gully.
It just came up with such intense heat, and the roar of it, you've got no idea of the noise it made.
The flames went in a huge wave over them and over the top of the road and over the houses and dropped in the bush behind it.
Once the fire got hold of that sugar, and the smell of it was absolutely rotten. Burnt sugar, bottles were just popping, you know, everything was just exploding. Within probably 3/4 of an hour, the whole thing just burnt to the ground. Everything was gone. That church was the only thing left standing. Only thing out of all of this here, that church was the only thing left.
The fire destroyed 6 buildings in Station Street, including Wright's Garage and the Rehabilitation Centre.
I had the boss's 2 children because they lived over North Mall and they couldn't get home. So she said, take the children, and I got a lift to Katoomba, and I stayed up there for all of the duration of the fires.
Mick was 21 months, Shane's was 6 months. They were in the pram. I just grabbed a few things, snappies and some milk and my wedding album. And we came back out onto the mall, and Mr. Beckman, our fire area chief, he said, you've got to get out of here. He said, the police are down on the corner, they've shut the mall, you've got to go.
And then we didn't really know till the next morning how many shops were burnt because there wasn't the communication like there is today.
I had a horrible, I hate saying this because I get all upset, but on the way to Katoomba I thought, I was only 25 and I had only married 3 years, 2 babies, and I thought, we're not going to get out of this, we're not going to have a life.
It was, you just didn't know if you were going to go home to a home or to rubble.
In the space of a few hours, the 1957 fire of Monday, December the 2nd, destroyed over 170 homes, as well as businesses, shops and schools. thousands of hectares of bush were torched and hundreds of people were left homeless. It's a grim tally. The numbers of houses shown lost in each of these streets are a stark reminder of the widespread devastation. Since 1957, the Blue Mountains community has continued to face bushfires.
There was fires in 1957, 1968, 1977, 94, 2001.
You know, they've been bad in Blackheath and Springwood, Winmalee, all down there. It's just burnt homes and property.
In the 1977 fire, there were no properties here. These properties have all been built since, and the fire came up very hot and strong up here.
I now live in Medlow Bath, and just 18 months or so after I'd moved there, there was a major fire in the Megalong Valley that jumped the escarpment and went around my house.
And we had a really big one on the south side, which was known as the Mount Hall Fire. And it basically stretched from Table End Road all the way down to Glenbrook.
In September 2011, one of the neighbours gave us a call. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and said that there was a fire to the west of us, burning very, very slowly. And then at 8 o'clock, I was in the kitchen, and I looked up, and 2 doors away, I could see the flames.
No, and the catastrophic fires, or even the severe to extreme fires, are comparatively rare. Most fires we can control if the fire danger is not too severe. But there's the odd one that is just uncontrollable.
My main concern is any fire that comes from the northwest. If there's a very strong wind and there's a fire in that direction, then we'll be subject to ember attack. And that's the one that concerns me.
Bushfire is an important part of the ecology in the Blue Mountains. But because of climate change, conditions ripe for catastrophic fires will become more common. The 1957 fire was a catalyst for changing how bushfires are fought, and every major fire since has led to further improvements.
Things are totally different to the early days.
The equipment is vastly improved, and it's continued to improve over time.
You have the helicopters and planes that drop the water.
And we have the benefit of a lot more knowledge about fire behaviour, which keeps increasing.
And there's more scientific approach to fires, the cause of fires, the control of fires.
A lot of scientists now looking at bushfire behaviour.
The advantage of being part of the CFU is that we're very much prepared for anything that comes through. We've protected our properties, keep the areas clear wherever possible. One of the other advantages is a sense of community. We've got to know everybody in the street.
Some of us might be better prepared for fighting bushfires now, but the community of 1957 showed incredible resilience in picking themselves back up after their catastrophe.
Well, I guess everybody was in shock because there was no power, no water, and a lot of homes destroyed and a lot of distressed people, and everyone just sort of did their best.
We had lots of ducks and chooks and billy goat and various animals, and most of them had been burnt or injured, and a friend's father came and destroyed them.
Yes, when they first discovered us, when they first ran into us, they made us sit down and we give some sandwiches. The look on Sergeant Sanderson and the other 2 constables' faces, I'll never forget.
The group's leader, Barry Carter, had run 8 kilometres in bare feet through the bush to get help for the boys.
I had blisters in my mouth, the ear, all my ear. I couldn't, my left ear and the arm was taken in the hospital. All my hair was burnt, singed.
And because there was no electricity, no phones, no gas, no nothing, but I had a fuel stove and I thought, dare I put it on? Because the men were still in, the fire brigade was still in the mall trying to hose everything down, and they'd been working for 6 or 7 hours, non-stop. We better make them a cup of tea and sandwiches, so we'll make everybody some. Don and Jack McNevin turned up with all the beer. So that was good for the firefighters, yeah.
By 4 o'clock it would have been 20 cakes and food enough for weeks by the people from which we consider then the rich people of Leura, from South Leura, and they were wonderful. They just drop it and say good day and go, and people were so kind and giving and unbelievable, yep.
Well, that night we had a few people come to the door because they still couldn't find their children. Not everybody had phones in those days. It wasn't, you know, we're only a small community and not very affluent. And people just had to keep going around and asking people for their children.
People just had to sort of get on with their lives. You know, people that could go to work the next day, we just got up and went to work. We had no counselling or nothing.
Everybody, they went round and everybody pitched in with what they had extra to give people to sustain their cupboards and what they'd lost, you know.
But then you heard of all the other people had lost their homes by going back to work the next day, and it was hard to sort of talk to them about it because, you know, that they had lost their homes. It was a terrible thing for them to happen.
All any of us had were what we were standing up in. We had no other clothes, no possessions, nothing. That was it, just what we were standing in.
Up in Main Street, Katoomba, where the medical centre is now, there was the old David Jones clothing factory. It was a big empty building. And so we set up a relief centre there. And we got great cooperation from the council. The next day we got a truck arrive from Beverfields with, it was full of mattresses. We had about 100 mattresses. That was the first truck that arrived. Well, from that day on, stuff was coming. Knock and Kirby sent these pots and pans, Anthony Hortons. There was blankets, clothing, there was stuff coming from everywhere.
They had trestle tables out with clothing and things that people had donated, and we were taken around and basically clothed from that.
And then we had to find accommodation. That was another job that I took on, trying to find accommodation for people who had nowhere to live, you know.
Lions, they were very good. They built little places for the people that lost their homes on their properties.
In the couple of weeks after the fires, the Lions Club built sheds which were garage size with a small corner with a sink and things in.
The Lions Club built a little house, and which they built like 150 houses of those they built in Leura or something like that, all in one weekend. They just turned up on Saturday morning with trucks and truckloads of stuff, and 20 or 30 blokes, and got stuck into it.
All that remained of Leura Primary were the front steps, and when the new school was built, they kept those front steps as a reminder of that terrible day.
Oh, it made me very mindful of the fact we live in a dangerous area. When I built this factory here, I put in water and 2 very large water tanks. We've got over 100,000 litres of water, which we capture from the roof.
One of the first things we had to put in was fire protection, thick glass or double glazing, all under house spaces to be protected. The cladding material has to be non-flammable. Aluminium
and nylon gauze on your windows, it's a no-no, it's got to be steel.
And people up here should look to having some sort of idea where the safe places are to go, make sure they don't have trees hanging over their roofs, that they've got a hose that's long enough to reach every corner of their property.
You can't rely on other people to come and do things for you.
No, I think everybody needs to take responsibility for their own property.
It's not possible to have a fire truck turn up outside every property.
You get a major fire and it's, you know, fresh in people's minds, but then over time, you know, some people tend to either they shut it out or they forget or they just go back to normal.
I think there are many people who think the fires won't come again or that they will be protected. But the speed with which it hits is unbelievable.
We asked them how the other boys and Sergeant Sanderson led us in prayer and told us, you know, the boys had passed on. And he said, you'll have to pass the bodies, but they will be covered up in white canvas. And that's how that was it. We are thinking of you today. God bless you one and all.